Not here. Not now. Chapter 1: An Abhorrent Father. Her clothes torn off her body, Chelsea Jones found herself shoved into a room with no escape, and her eyes darted around in fear. There was no man in sight. Instead, he was observing her from behind a two-way mirror. Chelsea, on the other hand, could only see her shivering and helpless reflection. She was in a renowned club in Avonport, known as Femme Fatale. Beep. The signal light on the wall buzzed as a sign of her observer's decision to bed her that night. Horrified, Chelsea stumbled backward as she muttered to herself, "No, no, no. I can't prostitute myself like this." Right then, the door behind her opened, and one of the women who had shoved her into the room entered. She draped a dressing gown over Chelsea before pushing her into another room. The setup of this room seemed different from the previous one, featuring an apartment-style layout with a bedroom, a balcony, and an attached bathroom. The bedding was as white as snow. "Mr. Jones is selling your virginity, and our client has agreed to this transaction. We will be checking the sheets after the deed for verification. Once we are satisfied, we will wire the balance to Mr. Jones' bank account. Otherwise, Mr. Jones will be subject to a penalty amounting to 10 times the transaction amount. And you must serve in Femme Fatale as a hooker for life. Understood?" Chelsea shuddered in fear as the words caught in her throat. She could not bear to imagine the fate that would soon befall her. "Understood. Answer me," the women crowding her demanded a reply. She jumped in surprise before nodding meekly. I understand," she stammered. "It is futile to escape. Mom's safety is at stake. So there's nothing I can do but accept my fate." Her womanizing, gambling addictive a father had racked up an astronomical debt. In order to pay it off, he had forced Chelsea to prostitute herself by threatening her mother's safety. She and her mother had pulled through many hardships together all these years, and the latter had suffered silently through countless humiliations for Chelsea. In fact, the abhorrent man who sold her off was not even her biological father. When he forced himself on her mother back then, she was already pregnant with Chelsea. Her mother told her to keep him in the dark about her true parentage, or she would be at the receiving end of more unspeakable horrors. The clients of Femme Fatale are all rich men. Naturally, they're expecting a fun time for the small fortunes they've handed over. Feel free to let your imagination run wild when you seduce your client. Acts of false modesty to deter the client are a big no-no. If the client is dissatisfied with your service and makes a formal complaint, the consequences will be yours alone to bear. Who knows? You might not even live to see the next day. Words flew at her from all directions, and Chelsea could only nod weakly. She knew how things worked here. Cooperation rather than resistance would work better in her favor. But that did not stop the overwhelming fear she felt in her bones. She asked uneasily, Is there any alcohol here? Can I have some? How's your tolerance? If we're talking about beer, I get tipsy after a can. I'm drunk after a second. And I'll black out on my third. Get her a bottle of wine. Welcome to download Flipread app to read more chapters of Not Here, Not Now novel online.